So here's a huge question. How does a government actually get millions of people to change their habits? I mean, we're talking about massive, society-wide challenges, things like improving public health or tackling climate change. It's a question that honestly sits at the very heart of public policy. And the thing is, the old answers, yeah, they just aren't cutting it anymore. For decades, the government's playbook for big problems was pretty straightforward. But today's challenges, they're totally different. We're not talking about building a new highway anymore. We're talking about our personal lifestyles, our daily choices, our most deeply ingrained habits. And those are a whole lot harder to change. Just look at this. On the one side, you've got the classic government toolkit: laws, taxes, fines. I mean, these are heavy-duty instruments, right? They're designed to force change. But then look at the challenges on the other side. Can you really regulate someone into eating healthier or pass a law that makes them exercise? No way. These problems are super personal, and using those old tools feels, well, it's like trying to perform surgery with a sledgehammer. It's just not the right fit. Okay, so let's get into it. Policymakers started to realize they needed a totally new framework, and that realization led to something called mind space, which is basically a toolkit designed not to force us, but to gently guide us. And this right here shows a huge, fundamental shift in thinking. The old way, which you could call changing minds, it kind of assumes we're all perfectly rational robots. Just give us the facts, maybe an incentive, and poof, we'll change. But the new approach, changing contexts, it accepts that we're human, we're messy. We respond to subtle little cues in our environment. And this is the world of the nudge. And here's the core idea pulled right from the Mindspace report. It's not about fighting against our human nature. It's about going with the grain of how we think and act. It's brilliant, really. Think about something as simple as placing healthy food at eye level in a cafeteria. No one is forcing you to take it, right? But the context is changed to make the better choice the easier choice. It's low cost, low pain, and surprisingly effective. But this is where the story gets really fascinating. Because yeah, nudging works, but it raises a much deeper question. So what? I mean, does being nudged actually feel good? Does the change even last? And that question, well, it revealed a puzzle that nudging on its own just couldn't solve. And that pushed the whole conversation beyond just what we do and into the much more crucial territory of why we do it. It opened up this whole new dimension, the quality of our motivation. And the simple answer is absolutely not. Just think about it for a second. The feeling of doing something because you have to versus doing something because you genuinely want to. It's a night and day difference, right? And that difference is at the very heart of this powerful framework called self-determination theory. This chart, it just illustrates that spectrum so perfectly. Look, all the way on the far left, you've got A, motivation. That's basically a total lack of intent. Then, as we move to the right, we get into extrinsic motivation. It starts with external regulation. That's when you're doing something purely for a reward or to avoid punishment. It feels very controlled, right? But keep going. We start to internalize the reason. We begin to identify with its value, and eventually it becomes a part of our own core values. And finally, all the way on the right, we hit the jackpot, intrinsic motivation. That's doing something for the pure joy of it. This whole chart is basically a map of the journey from feeling controlled to feeling truly autonomous. So the big question is, how do we make that journey? How do we move along that spectrum toward that high-quality autonomous motivation? Well, self-determination theory argues that it all boils down to satisfying three universal basic psychological needs. First up is autonomy. And let's be clear, this isn't about being rebellious or totally independent. It's much deeper. It's the need to feel like you are the author of your own actions. Think about the difference between choosing your own project at work versus just being assigned one. That feeling of choice, of ownership, that is autonomy. Next up, we have competence. We all have this fundamental need to feel effective. It's that amazing, satisfying feeling you get when you finally master a new skill, or you crack a tough problem, or you just see yourself getting better at something you really care about. It's that, yes, I can do this feeling. And finally, there's relatedness. This is our deep-seated, totally human need to connect with others, to feel like we belong. It's about knowing you're part of a team or a family or a community where you care for others and you feel them caring for you in return. So, What happens when you put these two huge ideas together? When the practical how of mind space meets the profound why of self-determination theory? Well, you get something truly, truly powerful. And this table just lays it out perfectly. Mindspace gives us the tactical tools, the how. It's about changing behavior by changing the context. But self-determination theory, that gives us the strategic goal, the why. It tells us that for any change to be really meaningful and to actually last, it has to fulfill our basic psychological needs. And this, right here, is the crucial point of this whole explainer. The best, most ethical, and most effective nudges don't just trick us into a new behavior. No, they support our sense of autonomy by giving us meaningful choices. They boost our competence by making it easier to succeed. And they strengthen our relatedness by connecting what we do to other people. So you see, this isn't just some abstract theory for policymakers. It's a really powerful lens that you can use to understand the world around you and all the daily attempts to influence your own behavior. So here's your takeaway. The next time you see a sign or get an alert on your phone or you're presented with some choice that's designed to change what you do, just pause for a second and ask yourself, am I just being nudged or am I truly being motivated? Does this feel controlling, or does it actually support my need to choose, to succeed, and to connect? Is this just a clever trick, or is it genuinely helping me become a better version of myself? Because that answer, that reveals the huge difference between simply being managed and being truly, genuinely motivated.